Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, and today we will be talking about one of the, we're going to talk about the Biden speech slightly, but we're going to talk more about what it says about our politics in general, and we're going to relate some of that back here to Kentucky. But I got to tell you this, that Biden speech was one of the scariest speeches I'd ever seen, and mainly because of its implications and where they're going with it. And we'll dive more into that here in just a second. But as always, guys, I ask you to please like, comment, share, and subscribe in order to support the show. That helps out a lot. Spreads it far and wide as far as where we as people listening and paying attention. Review the show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. If you're catching this as a video on YouTube or Facebook, you can always listen to it in the podcast form as well on all major podcasting platforms. Just simply search the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Finally, please text the word Liberty to 33777. Once again, text the word Liberty to 33777 to join our text subscribe list, where we'll send you important updates about events going on with the campaign, as well as this podcast. And that's pretty much it. Events, this podcast. We'll also let you know about legislative things. That gets more important as we get into legislative season. So please text to subscribe. Finally, one more thing too as well. Please donate. Helps out, helps the campaign out. A few bucks goes a long way. You can go to c4ky.com. Once again, that's the letter C, the number 4, the letter K, and then the letter Y.com. c4ky.com. And thank you guys so much. So Biden's speech was one of the it's a scary piece of work. And it goes into kind of just one, where Democrats are, but two, where I think we need to be aware of as Republicans, and what we need to be asking our elected people to do. The first issue we're going to have here with this speech is, in general, some of the, I guess, the cinematography of it all, if you want to call that the set of the speech. It was not exactly a nice looking scenario there at all. The way they lit it and what look they were going for. Well, first, hold on real quick too as well. The other thing with this is he had some Marines there in the background of while he was speaking, and it just kind of really it caused some issues for some people, myself included, where we didn't really like the fact he was using the military in that way. It just didn't seem, I don't know, it just didn't seem like the right kind of thing to do there. That's just me. Because normally when you have a straight political speech like he was doing here, you don't have the Marine Corps standing in the background. One is he uses our military as a prop, certainly, overall, and also as well, it really, here you go. So here's a picture there. So you can see he's got his red scary background there, and which, by the way, is the quintessential, like every single dictator tyrant from every single movie ever, V for Vendetta and Star Wars and all those. That is the look they use. And what's scarier is when you work in politics or have been around politics at all, what you realize is this is not by accident. The words he chose was not by accident. None of it's by accident. It was not an accident in that way. They were purposefully trying to go ahead and do that. If you go, when you pick colors, so for an example, the sign behind me, the Brood sign, if I can get it on, it's not plugged in. The Brood sign behind me, it's normally red lit. Now it's not red lit because tyranny or anything else. It's red lit because that goes in to my colors, and it's a little bit of an accent. Additionally, as well, red is commonly associated with the GOP, so sometimes you use red to indicate your party status. Now, in this case, he wasn't using red to indicate party status. It was certainly to create a menacing look behind him, that front look lights, as we were shown in that photo, the military members in the background, implying the threat of the military force, certainly creates an issue. Now, as I was saying, what's scary about it is people looked at it and said, that looks good. That is the look we're going for. And the words that he said, they also said, that sounds good. That's what we want you saying. And so what ends up being the issue here is you cannot listen to what he said, and you cannot look at that background and not feel a sense of dread if you are at all conservative. Because what he said was literally kind of cat out of the bag, that MAGA Republicans, aka Trump supporting Republicans, are essentially domestic terrorists. That's what he called them, domestic terrorists, and hate democracy and the Constitution and everything else, yada, yada, yada. But what's scarier about that is as he does that, and then as we see things like the FBI going after Trump in such a way, which, by the way, on the FBI going after Trump, I have a new theory. Okay, bear with me here. Here's my theory. You may agree, you may disagree. Hillary Clinton's running for president in 2 years. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Andrew, what's that got to do with the Trump FBI raid? Follow me here, okay? What if they're not going to indict Trump? They're not going to do anything else, right? But what really hurt now, stay with me. I know you're thinking, Andrew, what are you saying? But follow me. Hillary Clinton's been awfully active in the media and on the Netflix and things like that, doing her little what is that show? Gutsy show. I guess the gutsy thing was bothering to stay with her husband after he was receiving sexual favors from the help in the White House. Any woman who really knows her self-worth, I think would maybe so publicly like that have, I don't know. I think she should have reacted a little bit differently. I love my wife very much. She loves me, and that sense of betrayal certainly would be devastating. But seemed not bother her too much. I guess she's real gutsy and don't need no man. Certainly not a man that respects her. Anyway, so going into it though, I think she's gonna run. Here's why. Follow me. Bear with me. What they're trying to claim Trump did, mishandling of classified materials, is very similar and the same as. It isn't same in that sense, not to the degree, not to the varying largeness, not to the fact that Trump was president. She's Secretary of State. Two different rules when it comes to classified materials, mainly complicated by the fact that the president can declassify anything, which makes it even more complicated. But they're trying to create this claim that he mishandled things and then created he obstructed justice in the thing. Because if you remember, what Hillary Clinton did was she mishandled these documents, and then as they were researching while they were going through discovery and figuring out and collecting evidence for the crime and everything else, she wiped all of her computers. And so she should have been charged with obstruction of justice, and she wasn't. And that was one of the big takeaways. And they know that'd be attacked for her. So they figure Trump's the candidate in 24. We'll do this. It won't stick. It won't work. But then we can go ahead, and when Clinton runs, we have the whataboutism to play off of, and we don't have to worry as much about that affecting the outcome. I think that's what they're doing. Hey, call me crazy, but that's what I'm going for. But that is obviously a political move, and that's the point overall, is that a lot of what we're seeing out of the Democrats is using government and forces in a political manner. Now, this isn't new, right? And this kind of goes into the way you think. Now, follow me here, but Republicans in general. So, an issue a lot of us talk about is with this whole changing pronoun thing and changing your gender thing. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. But let's say that we want to go ahead and use that as an example. When you walk up and you look like you're wearing a dress and have a beard and everything else, and come up and say, my pronoun is they, we say, that's really weird. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call you, you got a beard. You look a little more masculine. I'm going to call you a dude. If I slip up a few times calling you a dude, that's because, well, you look like a guy, and that's what I'm going to say. I'm just going to use whatever pronoun I feel like using because you're presenting yourself as. And if you want to be called her, then you should, be a her. And if you want to be called him, then you should be a him. But like, where it's not so hard. Like if I have to ask you what your pronouns are, um, there's a problem going on. That's my point. That's it. But putting that to the side, just talking about the fact that I don't want to use government to force you to not be able to request your pronouns. I don't want to use government to somehow eliminate you or have the Gestapo come after you because you're mentally ill, right? As long as you can at least feed yourself, I guess, and take care of yourself. That is what it is. But I don't want to do that. But what do the Democrats want to do if you're not willing to play along with those types of fantasies? They want to arrest you. They want to claim it's a hate crime. They want to charge you for it. If you're not willing to transition your child, see, if somebody else wants to transition their child, most of the time Republicans are like, that's weird. That's strange. That it's as long until we get into surgery, and then surgery, it's like, hey, you can't do that. That's child abuse. But anyway, so we can say, hey, that's strange, that's weird. But we're not exactly advocating for the police to come around and arrest you for doing that. But what do you see the left doing? I mean, look up in Canada and California, and it's certainly making its way across the nation, where if your child says, I'm a guy, and was born a little girl, and at 10 years old, she's like, I'm a dude. And then you won't like give her hormone treatments and gender affirming care, as they call it. What do they want to do? They want to take your kid away, the rest you, call you child abuser, all these things. It's just fact of the matter. Republicans are less not even fascist, because fascism, according to Mr. Mussolini, fascism would be better, piece of crap Mussolini, fascism would be better described as corporatism, because it's simply using corporate government to do the kinds of things that the government can't. So, and we see that a lot. All the Democrats, we're seeing that with the ESG scores. We're seeing that with the way they're weaponizing some of our financial institutions and things like that. Clearly, the Democrats are more fascist, but the behavior I was describing might be more tyrannical in that way. And it's quite clear Democrats are more tyrannical than Republicans. They just are. They want to use government in a lot more situations. Just because I say I don't think government should be involved in it doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. Doesn't mean I can't think something you're doing is wrong. Doesn't mean I am robbed of that opinion. Doesn't mean I'm unable to voice my opinion. All it simply means to me is I'm not going to use government to bust down your door and arrest you because you're a dude who likes to put on dresses. But mark my words, Democrats would love nothing more than to have the police come and arrest you and charge you with a hate crime if you're not willing to call that dude that puts on dresses Zay. Trust me, they do. That's what they're doing in other places. This isn't even hyperbole. And so when we have that, we see them willing to do that. We see the Democrats coming out and they're putting forward this speech. They say this is a good idea. This is a good speech. It is being simply used. They're trying to spur up hate, resentment, and violence. That's what they're trying to do. That's what that speech is for. The military was there to make people feel like they're up against the machine, not just Democrats, but government as a whole. That's why they had it there. It was red with that kind of theatrics they're trying to get violence to go. They're trying to get demonstrations and the MAGA Republicans to raid on the Capitol again or whatever they think that they did, which they, whatever. But anyways, they want them to do those things because it's good for the midterms. They are trying to cause political violence to help them politically. I'm going to say that again. The Democrats are purposefully trying to elicit violence from Republican. Now, they don't care about violence on the left. With the BLM riots, fine. Those are okay. There's even some people in the Republican Party who seem to think those BLM riots were okay. More on that in other episodes. But BLM riots, okay. Those kinds of okay. But here, Republicans, gathering together in a rally, expressing their Second Amendment rights sometimes or whatever, pearl clutching. It's awful. It's terrible. right? We don't focus in on that. They're trying to elicit violence, though, to help them politically. These people hate us, not just Republicans. They hate you as citizens. They'd rather you be divided. They'd rather you be at each other's throats. They'd rather you are acting out violence in the streets to help them stay in power. I'm going to say that again. They want you to hate each other and attack each other so they can stay in power. That is what's so scary about that speech. I've never seen such a blatant showing of how these politicians think. And it's across both boards. Don't get me wrong. Republicans do this and Democrats do this, especially in the higher up echelons of the party. They stop caring about the people. They don't care anymore about doing what's right. It's like 1984 has this line. They say power for the sake of power. They're going after power for the sake of power. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to help you. They don't care about you. They don't like you. They don't love you. They don't do any of that. It's about what is best for them. And this misuse of government, that doesn't just happen in DC. Happens right here in Kentucky. In fact, Kentucky's consistently ranked as one of the most corrupt states in the nation. Think I'm lying? Go Google it. Go Google Kentucky most corrupt state in the nation, and you'll see it's constantly in the top 10 most corrupt. Mostly because we've been led by Democrats for a long time. But let's talk about Kentucky, okay? Let's give some good examples of where government misuse and overreach is being used here. We've got here in Lexington, Jim Gray. He was the mayor for a little while, and now he is the Secretary of Transportation under Beshear. Jim Gray's home property here in Lexington was not reevaluated for property value in almost 20 years. 20 years, they never reevaluated it for its property value. Democrats who love their tax dollars and they love raking it in and hiking it up and talking about everyone needs to pay their fair share. What is your fair share of somebody else's stuff? I don't know. But anyways, everybody needs to pay their fair share. Jim Gray is one of the richer people, certainly in Lexington. Jim Gray, let's see what his net worth is here. Jim Gray's net worth, according to, let's see here, according to, let's see if I can find it here. Mayor Jim Gray. So, because he owns Gray Construction, right? Let's see. Here we go. Jim Gray. Let's see if we can find it. Net worth. Probably not. He's CEO of Gray Construction. His net worth is believed to be in the neighborhood of $4 million ish. Okay. His company, Gray Construction, revenue wise, is doing, let's see here, it's been around for 60 years. It has, 57 employees. And here we go. It does Gray Construction. I'm sorry, it's got more employees than that. 1,300 employees, according to this. 1 billion, between 700 million to 1 billion in revenue yearly, Gray Construction. Okay. So Jim Gray owns Gray Construction, around $1 billion company. So Jim Gray's worth more than a couple million. He's worth a fair amount more. His property value, his property tax. So if there's anybody, this is the guy that Democrats would sit there. Jim Gray's the kind of guy that Democrats would sit there and say he needs to pay his fair share of taxes. His property value on his home has not been reevaluated in 20 years, despite the fact that homes all around him had been getting their property valued every couple of years. But so just so happens his home hasn't been done. And when asked about the PVA, he said, well, it must have been a slip through the cracks. Right? There's a lot of slips through those cracks in Lexington property valuation as far as it goes. But it's real interesting. It's really interesting that we see this Democrat not paying his fair share of taxes. What else we got here? Economic Development Secretary Larry Hayes. So everybody knows I dislike this Ford deal. But it's interesting that the point man for the Beshear administration on this was Economic Development Secretary Larry Hayes. And Larry Hayes, by the Ethics Commission, was asked to remove himself from the deal because he stands to financially greatly benefit from it. And you say, Andrew, how does he benefit? Well, it turns out old Larry Hayes owns 10 acres right next to the developmental site for the Ford battery plant. That's right. So for the Ford battery plant, he owns a chunk of property right next to it. And then on top of that, he owns a industrial storage facility just 3 miles down the road. It is estimated that he will have a 10 times up in value of his property, that piece of land he owns, once this factory is going in there, deal signed and done. That property next to it shoots up in value, as does his industrial storage facility. Nice, right? The ethics committee asked him to be removed. Bashir left him on. Why? Well, because Bashir's, both Andy and his dad, are just as corrupt as the rest of them. They don't care about things like ethics. They don't care about those kinds of things. Let me tell you about how much Bashir doesn't care about ethics. Let me tell you about just how much Bashir is just like old Joe Biden, willing to use the government to target his political enemies. I'll give you an example here. I'll use our example here. So for those of you who are unaware, 2 years ago, right, my coffee shop brewed. We stayed open fighting on these mandate stuff because, well, it was wrong, right? And we don't need to go to the ins and outs of it, everything else. All you need to know is we lost our liquor license, our beer license, not liquor. We sell beer for about 2 months. We got it back while we were going through the appeals process on it. And that appeals process has been ongoing. Bashir still has us in court trying to take away our beer license because, and this is the stated reason, because we created an unsafe premise when we stayed open with the vid. And so now you may be asking yourself, what do you mean by that? Well, the statute says a facility that serves alcohol has to keep a safe premise. Now, what it was meant to mean was bouncers, if you have too many people, security, not over serving, not, creating a big drunken mess, whatever, right? Safety. Now, what they did is they took that to mean, well, also too, you now have to create a safe environment for diseases. And what's funnier is that during the administrative hearing that was last year, and you can watch a replay of that, I think, over on Broods if you want, the state epidemiologist admitted that according to currently known science, I was actually not creating an issue. But the science they knew at the time, when I stayed open, stated that I was. So they even admitted in court, the state epidemiologist admits that they should have never shut down restaurants to begin with. That it did nothing to fight vid. That there is nothing that occurred there. And by me staying open and serving coffee, I created no risk to people or to my community. They admit that in court under oath. But according to the science they knew at the time, they thought I was. So the administrative judge rules saying, well, this is kind of confusing. How about the 2 months where he didn't have his license back then? That's punishment. And then we all just move on with our lives. That wasn't good enough for Bashir. So he demanded that they take my license anyways. And we're in court. Now I have my license while we're in court, but we're in court. Now what gets more interesting about this is the fact that when you go back and you look at prior state budgets, this last one and the one before last, as a line in there that says Bashir cannot expend more than $5,000 enforcing COVID mandates. What is he doing when he spent way more than that just in my court case? I don't know what else he's done for other people, but just in mine alone. So not only is he going after somebody claiming that they are creating an unsafe premise when their own people admit I wasn't, but additionally as well, they're violating state statute in spending money enforcing vid mandates. Now, of course, this is all in court, and there's appeals, and there's arguments, and everything else. Because nobody enforces the law in the government. That's what you find out. And so when it comes to people like Bashir, he can willy-nilly use government how he wants to against his political enemies and against whoever he wants. And he wants me to pay because I dared to threaten him and I made his life hard because I dared to try to provide for my family. And so he's violating state statute. He's violating the law. Corrupt as all get out to target a political enemy. And what happens? We got to wait for the courts to figure it out, which we see what's wrong there. I mean, that takes time and money, and it also costs us and it creates damages. I'll give you an example. Recently, we wanted to up our beer license to be able to sell poured liquor. They said no. They said no because, well, we need to see what the outcome of this case is before we do it. And I can go and get an attorney to fight on it and argue it and everything else. But, you know, it costs more money for me, more money out of our pocket to continue to fight on these things. But that's what they want, because they take your money at gunpoint, essentially. And if you think they're not, don't pay your taxes and see what happens. Just because when they first show up, they don't have guns doesn't mean eventually they won't. The threat's there. You pay your taxes mostly because of the threat. I'm sure you don't believe you're getting a good deal. And so they take our money and then they use it to tyrannically go after whoever they want and bleed them out. If you can't get them legally, if you can't throw them in jail, bleed them out financially, just like they're doing to Trump. Trying to bleed them out as much as possible. Millions of dollars going to attorneys and everything else. And who pays for it when they're wrong? After years and years of fighting, most of the time, the taxpayer ends up having to foot the legal bill of the person they wrongly went after. Just in paying out attorney fees alone to the other side. I know Bashir has cost the taxpayers around $500,000 at least from lawyers I know. From people like Chris Weiss winning cases, and then they had to pay the legal fees. But what happens to Bashir? What happens to Biden? What happens to them when they violate the law like that? Nothing does. Nothing. You have Bashir literally saying, you have Biden literally saying, I can't do something with executive order. I can't erase a student loan debt. I can't extend the eviction moratorium. I can't do these things. Then does it anyways. And what happens? Nothing does. And they'll continue to do it. So what do we do? What do we do? What do we do to address things like Jim Gray, Larry Hayes, and Bashir here in Kentucky? What do we do to deal with these corrupt pieces of garbage? And they are corrupt. And I know as they're hearing that, they're saying, what are you saying? The pearl collectors out there, did he just call Jim Gray and Larry Hayes and Bashir a piece of garbage? I did. Well, the rest of us are faced to pay our full tax bill for many things these political people have advocated for, to pay for their projects and their ideas and their money, and them coming after us to pay for them. And then they avoid those same things. Or Bashir using our tax dollars to subjugate us. And then when we fight back, paying us back with our own tax dollars for the political fee, for the lawyer fees for those who stood up on it. So what do we do? What do we Republicans do? Here you go. Republicans, stop legislating like you're trying to stay in power and start legislating and start acting and changing the government so you don't mind if your enemies have control of it, because one day they will. In Kentucky's entire history, we've only had 9 Republican governors since 1860. I'm going to go back to only 1860 because Whig Party and stuff. 9 since 1860. 30 Democrat Republicans at the same time. In the last 100 years, we've only had 6 Republicans, 16 Democrats. Republicans have only had control of the House of Representatives in the state of Kentucky for the first time. In 2017 is when they first got control for 100 years. 100 years. It is not and should not be impossible for Republicans to be able to understand and conceptualize the idea that Democrats will take over one day. And we need to legislate and prepare ourselves for that. We need to build a government that we don't mind them running because it's not able to do things. We need to stop rolling things forward and roll things back. I'll give you an example. These Republicans in this state created Kentucky's Commission on Race and Equal Opportunity. Get rid of it. That is the kind of thing that Democrats will grab a hold of and use to force down their own woke ideologies. You may have created it thinking, oh, well, we want to make sure everything's equal. Or I don't even know why you created it. I don't know what garbage lie from the Democrats you bought into that made you vote yes on this, but get rid of it. It's crud. It's a cruddy idea. It is a liberal socialist justice warrior idea. And if you leave it in place, they will use it to justify what they're doing. And when you go after them in court, guess what? They will claim the fact that you made it is giving them their powers. This isn't a new idea. This is what Beshear did when he's arguing in court. Well, you're the ones who voted for it. Talking about the emergency powers. Up until the 1990s-ish, I think late 1990s, there's only one body who had the ability to suspend law in the state of Kentucky, and that was the legislature. Makes sense, because they're the ones who make the laws. So, of course, they could suspend laws according to our Constitution. They were the only ones, our state Constitution. They then, in the 90s, give the ability to suspend law to the governor in the state of emergency. Republicans get control in 2017 of the House. They're Republican governor in Bevin, and they don't roll that back. They don't change that. Instead, what they do is they leave it alone. Beshear gets in control. The emergency over vid happens. He then uses that to suspend law. You try to sue him in court for what he's doing, and the state Supreme Court says he can do it because you've given him the power. So what do you do when you get back into power? Do they pull back the ability to suspend law to only legislators? No. They say that the attorney general can now suspend the law. The governor makes the request and the attorney general approves it. What happens when they're both Democrats? You don't think it'll happen? Look at our history. At some point, the legislature will be a majority of Republican, while the AG and the governor are Democrats. It will happen. And you have once again set us up to be in the same situation we just were with vid and suspending law and not calling you into session to be able to take control. Leave the ability to suspend laws with you. What else? What else do we got? We got the pension problem here in the state. What caused that? Old Beshear's daddy borrowing against the pensions. We have a balanced budget amendment in Kentucky, but for some reason the pensions don't count. Your pension obligations are not a part of your general thing. So what happened is essentially Beshear Sr. was not paying into the pensions as he should have, and instead was spending on all kinds of other boondoggle stuff. What ended up happening was the economic downturn happened, and then the pensions started going broke because of the fact that they had no money because they were losing it in the stock markets. If they're fulfilling their pension obligations and not borrowing from it for whatever boondoggle BS Beshear wanted to do at the time, then it wouldn't have been an issue. Bevin comes in trying to fix it. He obviously gets a lot of pushback. Point being is the real way to fix this is to come in and say, no, your pension obligations as figured upon this process is a part of our budget to stop the Democrats from destroying the state pension again. They're relying on you guys to get it right. And I get it. They're politically going to play whatever games they're going to play. But it's not about staying in power. It's about building the kind of government you want to rule you. And the government you want to rule you fulfills its pension obligations. Get rid of the income tax. If we lower the amount of ways that the government can tax us, and we consolidate it down more into solitary taxes on the public, then we're more aware and you get more pushback. You see, follow me here. They tax us 20 different ways till Sunday in order to hide how much they really take from us in taxes. You pay a tax every time you turn around. Reduce it down. Make it one sales tax. Get rid of the income tax completely and then spend less money. And you force them to not be able to spend as much because you got a balanced budget. And now you've gotten rid of different ways they can tax us to raise those revenues. And now they only have this one way. And if they raise it too high, guess what? The citizens have a problem. They either A, replace them, or B, it becomes to a head. But regardless, they're going to know exactly how much they're being taxed and what the issue is. So get rid of the income tax. And then pass a constitutional amendment to keep it gone so Democrats can't change it. It makes it harder to undo. At the national level, we see the same thing. When we get a Republican president again, with a Republican House and Republican Senate, pass a law enshrining Trump's energy policies so when a Democrat takes over, they can't play with our gas prices. People talk about why is it that the Republican candidates aren't doing as well? They're not inspiring. Some of them are very inspiring. The Republican Party right now isn't very inspiring because all you say is we're going to stop them. And do what? What are you going to replace it with? You kept saying that about Obamacare. What happened? Step up to the plate. Cast a vision. Give us policy goals. We're going to get rid of income tax, not just as a state, as a country. Give me a policy goal to latch onto that you're going to push towards. The Democrats, they have goals, universal health care, UBI, whatever, to, take all the immigrants in, make you poor, put you in blockhouses, whatever their goals are. Give us a policy goal that builds the kind of government you want your enemies to be in charge of. Our country, our state, is depending on it. It is dependent upon us to stand up and do the right thing. It is dependent upon Republicans to stop messing around and once again start building the kind of government that we wouldn't mind our enemies being in charge. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day.